Hello, everybody. My name is Faith. I am with Med School Tutors, and with me today is my amazing colleague who just matched, soon to be Dr. Elsaadi. Do you want to introduce yourself, Ali?
Hi there, everyone. My name is Ali Elsaadi. Just like Faith said, yes, I did just match into general surgery at Texas Tech University in Lubbock. I'm also from SGU, so that's kind of why we put this together, to hopefully ease people's nerves and, kind of help people relax a bit with all the crazy scheduling issues that have been going on. I've been working with med school tutors now for over a year and a half. I've had a lot of SGU students and we've kind of dealt with a lot of different scheduling changes in those regards as well. So we kind of wanted to put this together to hopefully, offer some advice if we can.
Absolutely. Thank you for, as usual, making time for this. So,
No, of course,
all right.
of course,
So,
happy to.
yeah. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We know that a lot of things are in flux right now for med students around the world, to say the least, but especially for SGU students. A lot of you have had to leave the island very abruptly. And we know that the Prometric Centers have also, implemented a temporary closure. So today, Ali and I thought that we could just kind of go through some tips, some do's and don'ts for some things that you can do during this time to make the most of it. So Ali, why don't we kick it off by talking about that very thing? Do you want to say anything for the students who find themselves with the extra time, especially for those who are just coming off the island right now?
Right. So for the students coming off the island for term 5 ones, first off, congrats. Getting off the island is always very challenging. And then for the other students, terms 4 and below, things are going to be a bit different for y'all, kind of getting rid of that term 4, especially because that's, when you learn a lot of your pathology and also, a lot of your medical terminology. So we have some kind of advice in regards to both of those situations. For the term 5, one of the big things is y'all have now a lot of extra time to study, which is, in my mind, in medical school, extra time to study is always really nice, right? So with this whole, 2-month shift in your schedule, essentially, one of the big things that you can do is kind of really stick to whatever schedule you had going. And then from there, kind of progress on like you're getting ready for step studying. And what I mean by that is if, let's say, during the semester, you wanted to do, cardio, pulm, renal, all those topics as they were going through them in class, then now you can kind of continue on that while you're still kind of in that study mode, in that semester mode. And then once you finish, because you'll have extra time, first off, you'll finish a bit earlier with everything, instead of middle of May, maybe you'll finish end of April, kind of reviewing all those things. And then once you do finish, hopefully test centers, we'll address that in a second, but hopefully they'll be open. And then on top of that, you can take a bit longer of a break in between starting dedicated and finishing the semester. So you don't feel, super burnt out when you get to that part. That would be kind of the biggest thing for at least the term 5, and then kind of, bring up your dedicated too. Currently, I'll probably have your exam scheduled for like mid-July or so. So the Prometric stuff doesn't really affect y'all too much. But if anything, you'll be ready for step earlier and you can bring up your test date earlier, and then you can have more vacation in the middle because, that's always nice too in between clinicals and term 5 and step to kind of get a little bit of vacation and some family time because this is, challenging no matter what. So that would be something that could be beneficial in that case.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what about the students who aren't in term 5 yet? Maybe people who are still working through a lot of their preclinical courses and things of that nature.
Right. So the ones that aren't in term 5 yet, I think one of the big things you can do is either go back and kind of review those topics that you felt like you needed a bit more work on. A lot of the times my students come out of term 5 or finish term 4, and their big worry is, I want to look more at cardiophysiology, GI pathology, hemonc, those big topics, right? So this would be a perfect time to kind of revisit them and maybe also even switch how you approach the material too, because you have this extra time. It's like some people will review things 6 times in a week but they'll review it very superficially those 6 times. And the way they, can do well on exams may be just they have a really good, recognition, pardon. Whereas other people, they like to, take their time, usually things more slowly. Maybe they'll go over it 3 times in 1 week, but then they'll have better recall, which is, associated with long-term memory, right? So maybe that could be something you could do as well, kind of improve your basic understanding of the material so that when it does come time to dedicate it and everything like that, you're not really reviewing from the beginning. You're more just adding on details, essentially. So those are some things that I think would be beneficial in that extra time they all have. And of course, also, if you had hobbies that you used to do and now you have extra time, they're good de-stressors too, right? So you always want to make sure to de-stress a bit as well.
Would you recommend that students who are not yet in dedicated or early dedicated for that matter, but they're approaching it, would you recommend starting to familiarize themselves with UWorld or maybe using an alternate QBank or first aid, something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think definitely for step 1, UWorld has been the one that most consistently all my students and all my other colleagues' students have benefited the most from. But if you feel like maybe you're not ready for, the level of difficulty of those questions, one thing you could do is use RX. They cover material in a very superficial but complete way, in that they kind of get you thinking in the appropriate manner so that you'll be able to understand why you get UWorld questions wrong, because you're going to get more wrong than right. That's going to be understood. But also they'll help you know how to get questions right. So it's really beneficial in both of those ways. Videos, Pathoma is always good for pathology if that's something that you like. But some people have this idea that you have to read first aid cover to cover. I don't know if I personally agree with that, because reading only gets you so far, right? You're more likely to remember something you heard from Hassan Sattar or one of your other students or friends, right? So it's up to you in that regard, but those are kind of things that we see have been working for most of our students, pre-dedicated that is, and also getting into dedicated, definitely the UWorld. So those are common things that we see that help.
All right.
Yeah, no, I all the time get calls, just students telling me, oh, I'm doing 30% on UWorld, 40%. I'm like, that's perfectly fine at this point. Like, if it's the day before the test and you're getting 30 or 40%, maybe push your test date back. But at this point, again, it's all about learning the material. So getting things wrong helps you remember why you got it wrong, and then that helps you remember the concept.
Yeah, really, really good point. Okay, so then let's shift a little bit to speaking directly to the clinical students
right.
who have been impacted by all of this craziness. What recommendations would you have there?
Mm-hmm. So the big thing for the clinical students, I think, one, SGU has been very good about, they're going to make sure everyone gets credit. So, and, also creating online learning or tools and assessments so that you do get your credit and you do feel prepared to go practice once you finish med school. Obviously, you can't beat the real thing, being in a hospital, but they're still going to make sure you get a complete education. I think, that alone should reduce your stress. You don't have to worry about not meeting requirements to graduate. So that's perfect. That's like the biggest thing, right? Besides that, though, one of the big things is what to do with, again, all this extra time, considering, your shelves may have been canceled, your CS may have been canceled, your CK may have been canceled, right? The biggest one that I see being a problem is CS, because of the limited number of spots and the, limited locations, right, as well. And so things I've heard for that, I don't know if anyone else has heard anything or if you have yourself faced, but mostly they're going to add on afternoon times. So they'll double up on certain days, and that should, get the problem fixed. And then in terms of studying for that, it's just going to be, getting with a group of friends, hopefully friends who aren't sick, because, we don't want to spread anything, obviously.
Virtual meetings.
And practicing. Exactly. Online too would work great. And then, practicing using the Step 2 CS book, right? Doing your physical on your dog if you have to, or your friend, or whatever you find. That'll be the biggest thing in time in yourself. So that one, it's just going to be practice like always. For shelf, with those, Depending on the rotation, so people that are in the middle of a medicine or surgery rotation from SGU right now, typically those are 12 weeks. So if it's the middle of the rotation, it may be that, you know, your test date is okay, depending on Prometric. But if it's not, you know, more often than not, the way you learn for the shelf is everything you do during the rotation in terms of outside studying and also what you pick up from the hospitals. So really just focus on, you know, that outside studying. And then, you know, if you're starting a new rotation, kind of keep that knowledge there and review it when you can, but also focus on that new rotation because you need to not get behind is the main thing, right? You get behind in med school, that's really one of the hardest things to come back from. So as long as you kind of stick to whatever schedule you are doing studying wise and keep up with that material, you know, you'll be fine for the shelves as long as you, again, do all the U world and, you know, read what you can and make sure not to fall behind because those are the big things really. And if you do that, I think for the most part, everything should be okay.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think also, you know, one of the things we're recommending students do is to follow the NBME, whether on any of the other testing organizations. You can do it on social media, you can subscribe to the email list, because then you're going to be getting the updates on the regular as soon as they release them. I believe like today is Friday, let's find out, the 20th, losing track of time here and all this madness. And I believe it was yesterday that they announced that the Prometric Centers are working on ways to be able to test, provide the shelf exams, not at a Prometric Center. They're even experimenting with ways to do it proctored in home, like in the student's home. So there's going to be a lot of creativity on this front. And I think our biggest takeaway at MST is that they can't remain closed for too long because it's a massively impactful chain reaction if the Prometric Centers do stay closed. So they have to figure it out. So I think just repeating back what I was hearing from you again, it's the active learning, it's the making the most of the time that you do have now, especially if it's an abundance of free time, which what is that in med school, you know? And really just fighting the fight to stave off attrition, to keep your knowledge fresh. You know, and at MST, we're really big proponents of just, again, active learning techniques and, again, spaced repetition if you like using that, and just knowing how you learn. If you're not totally sure how you learn best, now is a great time to figure that out. So definitely would take advantage of that. Is there anything else, I guess, that you would, any parting words of advice, any further encouragement or perspective you would add?
Right. So one thing I forgot to mention earlier on when we were talking about students taking step one, for those that have their exams now and they have to reschedule, that's probably, you know, one of the more difficult situations to be in, especially if your exam was like in a week or, you know, was this week. And so with regards to those students, one of the big things you can do, because you know the Prometrics are not going to be open anytime soon, unfortunately, you know, you just schedule for the earliest available date, maybe take a week off, and then just go into reviewing kind of from the beginning, but shortening that review period, because at this point you've gone through everything that you need to go through. So, you know, you can kind of just do mini reviews basically of each topic, and that'll be probably the best way, but make sure to take time off because you don't want to burn out. So, you know, take time off, save whatever tests you still have left over to take for later, when it gets closer to your actual test date. And then, you know, try and just, you know, not get burnt out. That's the big thing. Just try and make sure you don't get burnt out. That's really the end all of this discussion.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I know burnout is something that gets thrown around a lot these days. And so really at the end of the day, what we're talking about is also just pure exhaustion. And like, there's only so much that your brain really wants to handle at any given point. So with this abundance of free time, right, or maybe not an abundance per se, but just increased amount of like flexibility with your schedule, shall we say, perhaps that's one of the greatest things that you can do is kind of find your comfortable limit, especially if you don't have to power through 12 hours of really intense work every single day for what is now an extended dedicated, you know, or maybe a more condensed dedicated if you move it up and you're able to take your exam sooner. Exactly. Cool. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I think anything else you want to add, Ali?
Yeah, I mean, guys, med school is going to be challenging no matter what. Like scheduling issues aside, it's already difficult enough. This obviously doesn't help, but SGU does help prepare you for life after medical school. And as long as you kind of, make sure to study on the side and do what you can and, use this time wisely, things will work out in the end. So yeah, wishing you all the best of luck with everything. Hopefully y'all end up matching to somewhere that you want to be.
Yeah. And don't we always say, like, in med school, there's never enough time?
Yeah, exactly. Now you have way too much time. So, try and use it well. That's a really big point too, I think.
Yeah, a really good point. Well, thank you so much, Ali. And honestly, guys, we've been working with SGU students for many, many years now. I've been with MST myself for 10 years. And I think the thing that is always true is change, right? That's the only constant.
Yeah.
So whatever is going on right now, this is going to pass. How it passes, we don't know. But the best thing you can do is really just control the controllables, really look at what's within your control. And a lot of the times that just comes down to what you do, say, think, all that jazz. And so much else is out of your control. So really lean into that, really lean on each other, because you have each other much more regularly when you're on the island. And then the second you leave, that can be a whole different ballgame in and of itself. So really look to each other, ask for support if you need it. We at Med School Tutors, we're always trying to put out as much helpful free information as possible. We've got weekly, sometimes multiple webinars in a week that we do for free. We've got our blog, we've got podcasts, we've got all sorts of stuff out there that we're trying to put out to help just like this. So if you have anything that you would like us to speak to, please let us know. You can get in touch on our website. You can email us at hq@medschooltutors.com. But we believe in you. We're going to get through this. Perhaps there's a gift to be found in this weird time. So thank you all for your time. We hope this was helpful. Ali, congratulations again. You did it.
Thank you.
Yes, Texas Tech, you got a real gift coming to you. And have a great rest of the day, everybody.